we're talking about, the whole Parsha.
Okay.
The king of Aram sends a message to the king of Israel, I'm sending you my favorite general. Cure him of the leprosy. So the king of Israel says, this is crazy. I can't cure him of leprosy. I'm not a doctor. And Elisha doesn't like me because he didn't keep Torah and mitzvahs the way he was supposed to. So he said, it's a trap.
It's a trap, right.
You're going to send me your general, I'm going to turn him down, and you're going to have an excuse to attack. So Elisha says, send him to me, I'll take care of him. Why? I want to show you, Yesh Navi B'Yisrael, there is a Navi Israel. So Naaman comes. Elisha doesn't even go out to meet him. Elisha says, by the way, it's so nice that you're here. A few miles down is the Jordan River, take a dip. Go into the Jordan River, you'll be fine. Naaman was furious. Come out, say hello to me, look at my leprosy, say some words, dance,
He tells him go to the don't go to the
are there better rivers in Aram? You want me to take a bath?
Yeah,
I can go swimming in Aram much better off.
And that was humiliating for him.
Of course it was. On his way out, he was so angry. One of his servants says, listen, he's a Navi. He said to do it. If he would have told you to do something hard, you would have done it. This is easy. Try it. See what happens. So he does it. And his skin returns back like a baby skin. So
The girl tries to convince him to listen to
and he does.
And he does listen.
So now he comes running back to Elisha to say thank you. Okay, this time Elisha goes out to meet him to say thank you. And he wants to give Elisha presents. So Elisha says, no, I'm not for hire. This was a favor, not for you. I did it to prove to the king of Israel, Yesh Navi B'Yisrael. And he does it. So then Naaman says, you're welcome, and he leaves. Naaman even becomes a ger, becomes a ger Toshav. They say, he became a ger Tzedek, ger Toshav. After he leaves, Gehazi runs after him. And Gehazi says, my master changed his mind. Some poor people came, maybe you have some gold, some silver, some clothes. So Naaman gives Gehazi a whole bunch of gifts. It was a lie. It was all a lie.
Right.
And when he comes back, Elisha says, where have you been? There's some errands. He says, I don't know, he didn't do some errands. You took the gifts.
Right.
Well, take all the gifts then. The leprosy of Naaman should now come to you and your children. Okay. So now Gehazi and his children had what kind of leprosy?
From
Naaman.
From Naaman, right.
Which was real leprosy. It wasn't Lashon Hara leprosy. It was the real stuff. No Kohen could help him.
But he was spoken Lashon Hara. Why you got the other one?
Who got
He spoke. He said, "Give me the bag because my master told me."
Because Elisha cursed him. Elisha said the leprosy of Naaman is going to go to you.
Oh, that's right.
And what was the leprosy of Naaman?
Whoever lies, he gets also.
Real one.
It was a real leprosy.
Whoever lies, right.
Okay? So that's why they were outside the camp. They were contagious. They were diseased.
Right.
In the end, they were the catalyst to bring a Yeshua. They were able to save the people from the hunger that was going on.
So what they did was in the beginning was bad, but the end of the story is like they did good.
In the end of the story, they obviously did some
Teshuvah. They saved the people.
They saved the people because they told everybody that the army had left and all the food is now there for them for the taking.
And that's what the Elisha said to the king of the Jews, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
There'll be a miracle.
And when the guy in charge didn't believe it, he says, you'll see it, but you won't eat from it. Okay. Parshas Tazria Metzora. Let's begin a little bit. Okay? Tazria says, V'daber Hashem Moshe Lemor, Daber Bnei Yisrael, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zochar. If a woman gets pregnant, she has a baby boy, so then she is Tomei Shivas Yomim, and on the 8th day she can go to mikvah and the child has his Brit Milah. And then she waits 33 days, for a girl 66 days, and she brings certain korbanot. She has to bring certain korbanot because during the pregnancy she might have made promises, etc., etc. And here we have, what?
No more babies.
No more babies. So here we have the mitzvah of Brit Milah also. So there's a whole bunch of medrashim. Look into this medrashim. First of all, there's a medrash rabbah, and it's brought down in the medrash Tanchuma. It says that there was an Arab king once came to Rabbi Akiva, and he said to Rabbi Akiva, I have a problem. I'm African American, I'm black, and my wife is black, and she just gave birth to a baby who's white. Should I assume she had an affair, and should I have her killed for cheating? That's what he asked Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, your bedroom where you have relations, what color are the walls? He says, we just painted the bedroom, the walls are white. She says, when you had relations, she was looking at the white walls and she was thinking white. So it's possible to have a white child.
Wow.
There's no proof that she was cheated on you. He says, where do you see this in the Torah? And he said, I see it from Yaakov Avinu, by the sheep. Yaakov wanted spotted sheep, so he put certain sticks that had stripes and spotted, and the sheep saw those sticks and they had children just like the sticks.
The Lavan.
Correct. Then the Gemara in Brachos says, and it's also in Maseches Bava Metzia, that Rabbi Yochanan, who was very handsome looking, used to sit outside the mikvah. Why? So when the women came back from mikvah, they looked at him and they had, oh, what a handsome person. And then when they had relations with her husband, they became pregnant. The children were very beautiful looking because they were thinking of a beautiful person, Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan was this way saying, I can influence women that their children should be very pretty, very cute
In
children.
Lakewood, it was happening the same thing.
What?
Lakewood. The child come out black. The
Right.
couple, how everybody
Yeah,
white, and dog was black.
Yeah, because it was a grandmother who had a relationship. It was a recessive dream. It could happen like that. It was a recessive dream. So, it's just very interesting, some of these stories that come out. Today we don't sit outside mikvahs because it's not tzniut, it's not something that is appropriate to do. The Sipurno brings down something very interesting. He says that as women get older, if they have children in their 40s, let's say, 50s, when they're older, most of the time the children are female, girls, not boys. So they asked on the Sipurno, but look at Sarah. Sarah gave birth when she was 90, and she had a boy. So he answered, that's why the Torah says that her skin returned back to being young again. That means under normal conditions she would have had a girl. But because she turned very young again, she had a boy. Then there's a Gemara in Gittin that during the second Beis Hamikdash, Yanai the king had 3 cities in the Har HaMelech, each with millions of people living in it. And one of the cities was called Kfar Decharya. Why? He says in that city, all the women, when they had their first child, had a boy. Then their second child was a girl, and they stopped having children. They all had 2 children, first boy, then girl. He says, there's another medrash in Eicha, that in this particular city, they only had boys. If you wanted to have a girl, you left the city. If you were pregnant and you wanted to have a girl, you left the city and you moved to some other city, then you had a girl. But as long as you lived in this city, there was a certain bracha in this city that all the children were boys. So it's interesting how they have different opinions as to what happened in each city over here. One is that they had a boy and then a girl, and then one is high. They just had boys. Then it brings down that 3 women died in childbirth. Okay, one is in the Torah. Which lady was having a baby and died during childbirth? Rachel. The other 2 is in Novi. One is no, doesn't bring Devorah.
Miriam?
No, doesn't bring Miriam. It brings the wife of Pinchas, ben Eli HaKohen. It says in the Novi that she died giving birth. And the third one was Michal, the daughter of Shaul. She was married to David. David was dancing before the Aron. She made fun of him. So David said to her, I would do this again in the Kavod Hashem. And the Novi said she had no more children, or she never had children until the day she died. And the Gemara says the day she died means she gave birth, and in childbirth she gave up, she died. So the Chidah talks about, we know that there are certain reasons why women die in childbirth, because they're not careful in nida, chala, hadlakas, esaner. But the Chidah says that's not the case over here. These women did not violate those halachos because they gave birth. They died shortly after the birth. They didn't die when the baby was coming out. They died a little bit after. Rachel died after Binyamin was born. Michal died after she gave birth. And Pinchas, his wife, died after she gave birth. So they all gave birth to live birth. So it's just very interesting. And it's very careful. The Chidah says you have to be very careful. You can't just assume that they did certain averot. They didn't do certain averot. It's just what it was. I had a case by me this Friday night. I had a couple, a newlywed couple, staying by me for Shabbos. They were sleeping by me, but they were eating someplace else. They were eating by their parents. So she asked if she could light candles. I said, no problem. I prepared for her 2 candles. Amongst Ashkenazim, all the women light their own candles. So my wife lights candles, my mother-in-law lights candles, if my daughter's there, my daughter lights candles. So she lit candles. So she lit 1 candle, and the second candle, she said, you can put that away. I brought my own candle. She put out a yortzeit candle. You know what a yortzeit candle is? It's a 24-hour candle. So I asked her, why is she lighting 1 candle, a yortzeit candle? She says, well, I want to be able to, I don't know where to light candles. You light candles where you sleep or where you eat. Mm-hmm. So this way the candle will burn long enough that when I come back at 11, 12 o'clock, it'll be burning. Okay. Who told you to do that? Some rabbi told her to do that. When she came back, before she left, the next, Motzei Shabbat, the candle was still burning. Sunday morning, the candle was still burning. So I said to her, don't ever do it again. She said, why not? I just tell the rabbi, don't ever give that advice to a young girl again. She says, why? I said, you can call me, I'll tell him why. She says, well, tell me why. I says, we have a rule, al tiftach peh, don't open your mouth to the satan. You're a young girl, your parents are alive and well. What are you lighting a yortzeit candle for? Yeah. You know how many people were asking me why there's a yortzeit candle over there? You know how many people were thinking maybe one of your parents had died? By lighting a yortzeit candle, you disrespected your father and your mother. And you put their lives in danger. Now, you don't know what to do, so light the candle and spend 5 minutes and read Tehillim, and then you'll enjoy the light. Yeah. The candle burns for 4 hours, the small little candles. You can come home after 3 hours, but you don't have to come home after 10 hours. But this candle burnt all night and all day. And I said, I had a case Hanukkah time, I think I told it to you. I had a guest Hanukkah staying at our house. So he was lighting his menorah. So when I light Hanukkah, Shabbos candles, so the oil, if I fill up the whole thing with oil, it will burn 30 hours. Yeah. So I fill half of it with water, and I put color water in it, and this way the candle burns for 3 or 4 hours and goes out. Yeah. So this guy didn't do that. He put in all straight oil. It burned for all day, all Friday night, all Shabbos. I said to him, what are you doing? He says, when I come back at 12 o'clock, I want to see the Hanukkah candles. I said, okay. I said, but what's going to happen is the glass is going to melt. You're burning the fire is going to... So I put 2 silver foil pans underneath, and the glass cracked and it spilled all over. And I said to the guy, don't ever do it again. And I for sure will never let you stay here again. Because you at 2 o'clock in the morning were sleeping, and I was sleeping, and this whole house could have burned down. That's what I told him. 2 days later, what happened in Borough Park? Yeah, burned. Someone lit the candles at 2 o'clock in the morning. What happened? Right? The whole house burned down, and people got killed.
Yeah. This way.
The children. That's what happened.
All the 3 kids.
Right. So my wife said to me, she said, don't ever talk Just don't ever say anything. Because you told this guy that, if you do this, the glass will crack, the oil will spill, a fire will start, the whole house can burn down. And 2 days later it happened. So this time, when this girl came with the Yortzeit candle, right? I was gonna say something to her. I told you I was gonna tell her about it.
You didn't say nothing.
My wife says, "Don't you open your mouth." I'm gonna tell her. I'll talk to her because I don't want my neighbor next door to drop dead. So you keep quiet. I said, I didn't realize, I had such a powerful mouth. No, you keep quiet, she said. I'll tell her. I'll correct it. I'll fix it all. Don't say a word.
But you said to her anyway.
I said briefly, but then my wife shut me up, and she took over the conversation. It says on the 8th day you do bris milah. It's interesting. There's a Rav Shimshon Pinkas brings down over here. He says the neshama has 5 parts. What are they? Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechidah. He says that when we say Shmona Esrei, and in the first section we do Mechayim Meitim, we say Mechayim Meitim 5 times. If you count, we ask Hashem to bring back life 5 times for the 5 parts of the neshama. Then he says, Rav Shimshon Pinkas, he says there are 5 stages of a person's life. When a person is born till age 3. So that is nefesh. They're a kid, they're a child, they're a baby. They don't do much. Everything is done for them. Ruach, when they start showing spirit, is from age 3 to 13. Now you have to start educating them, chinuch, and eventually they become bar mitzvah. Neshama is from age 13 to age 20. That's when they're teenagers, that's when they're in school, that's when they graduate, that's when they become who they are. Then chaya, their life, is from age 20 to 60. That's when they do service. A Kohen does service, a Levi does service in the armies from ages 20 to 60. That's the person's life. In those days, retirement age was age 60, I guess. And then finally he says Yechidah. Yechidah is the last stage from age 16 up. So he says there are 5 parts of the neshama. Each part reflects a different stage in a person's life, from the day they're born until age 60. So I found that to be very interesting.
It's according to what? According to the rabbinic?
According to the Ari. According, he says the Chidah and the Ari. Yeah. The Zohar. Then there's a quote from Mark Twain. Mark Twain was a famous writer, American writer, Samuel Clemens. Listen to what he said, very cute. He says, when I was a boy 14 years old, I thought my father was ignorant. I couldn't even stand being next to him because he was so foolish. My father was so foolish. I was 14 years old. When I became 21, I realized how smart my father was. And I said to myself, wow, he really got smart in the last 7 years. That was Mark Twain. The last 7 years he got smart. The truth is, he didn't get smarter. The boy from 14, when he was a teenager, thought he was the smartest. When he became 21, he realized that his parents knew what they were talking about.
That was right.
But Mark Twain had a very interesting way of writing it. Mark Twain had was very, very good at the way he wrote it.
That's a parallel side for the neshama.
Right. Yeah, when you're young, you think you know it all. That's what Nadav and Avihu said. They were walking behind Moshe and Aaron, figuring one of these old guys going to kick the bucket, and we can take over. Okay. A few interesting things over here. For example, it says, "Bayom hashmini yimo basar aloso." The Brit Milah takes place on the 8th day. So why on the 8th day? What's so special about day 8? So the short answer is
from the previous
that
parasha,
what?
From the previous parasha.
Right.
Vayhi bayom hashmini.
Vayhi bayom hashmini. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But the short answer is that by having the Brit Milah on the 8th day, it guarantees that the child will go through at least one Shabbos. One Shabbos. 7 days of creation, the 8th day is above creation. It's interesting that in Tehillim, Perek Kuf Yotes, The Aleph Beis has, each letter has 8 psukim. That the bracha that says Rifa'enu, Hashem should cure us from our illness, is the 8th bracha of the Shemona Esrei. So, that's interesting as well. They talk about that the Brit Milah was the 8th test of Avraham Avinu. So therefore, since it was test number 8, we wait 8 days.
8 days was bring it to death to the wall. Adam Rishon. The 8 days.
He brought what to the wall?
Death.
He brought death to the world actually on day 6.
Yeah, but it's accepted to the 8th.
Maybe that's what it was. It's interesting that the 8th generation of Klal Yisrael, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, then Levi, Kahas, Amram, Moshe, were Zochah to Gulas Mitzrayim. It says that there was 7 weeks preparation for getting the Torah, and the 8th week was Har Sinai, Shemini Atzeres, different things. But there's this priority 1 brought down an article from the New York Times that he says that a newborn baby is missing a certain protein, and this protein only comes into the body on the 8th day. And this protein helps heal open cuts and bleeding.
Swell up.
Vitamin K.
Right. So, bless you. So he says that it's interesting that comes on the 8th day. So there's a lot of different reasons why it's the 8th day.
Vitamin K.
Быстро заживает.
K.
Okay, a few more things over here.
K.
Let's go. This week we have Parshas Tazria and Mitzorah. What's interesting is that the Chidah never calls Mitzorah Parshas Mitzorah.
Why?
Because he says leprosy is not a nice word to use, and therefore we don't speak in that way. He brings down a Rashi. Rashi in Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Ches. Rashi says, V'roah HaKohen. Rashi says, he brings down over here, Ulukorban ha'omer b'parsha Zos Tiyah. Rashi calls this parsha Zos Tiyah Toras HaMitzorah. He calls it Zos Tiyah. Rashi did not refer to it as Mitzorah. Zos Tiyah. The Chidah in his Sefer refers to the parsha as Parshas Tahora, the holy parsha, how to become pure. He does not use the word Mitzorah. The Ben Ish Chai calls it Parshas Tahoros. The Rambam also calls it Parshas Tahoros. So it's interesting that even though our Chumash says Mitzorah, and we refer to it as Parshas Mitzorah, the Rishonim, Rashi, the Ben Ish Chai, the Chidah, the Rambam, never used that word.
Wow.
They had a different name for the Parsha. They called it Parshas Tahora, or Parshas Tahoros, or Zos Tihiyah. So it's very, very interesting. Now, let's take a moment to figure this out. The Torah does not live in a supernatural world. When Hashem created the world, He created the world to function in what we call Teva. What is the translation of the word Teva?
Nature.
Nature. Mother Nature. Okay? So when the Jewish people came to the Yam Suf, the water was flowing. When Moshe said to split, the Yam Suf says, no, I'm not splitting.
It's not my nature.
It's not my nature. I was created to flow. I'm going to do my job. That's how Hashem created me. Okay, there was a miracle exception. Just like there were miracles in Egypt, right? There were miracles.
Yeah.
In the Torah itself, we function under the laws of nature. It's very important to know that. Good evening, Shlomo. How are you? A person does a sin. Does lightning come down and strike you? No. A person does a mitzvah. Does a hand come down and give you $1,000 here, payment for your mitzvah? No. We don't know how the world functions. We just know one thing. There's a certain nature, and Hashem does not change nature. Hashem does not perform miracles. You know, it's an interesting concept. There are three exceptions. There are three situations in the Torah that are based on the premise that we don't follow nature, it's supernatural. The first one is sota. A man sees his wife talking to another man. The man goes to his wife and says, I forbid you that you should talk to that man. She goes ahead anyway and she talks. Now he suspects collusion. He suspects that they're having a relationship. So what does he do? Today, he would ask his lawyer to give $130,000 and don't tell me about it. I'm not saying who. I wish I had lawyers that did that. That would be great. Lawyers who just give out $130,000.
His money, not
Yeah, $130,000.
money.
That was his money. He says it was his own money. Okay. But that's today. In those days, they didn't do that. In those days, you could bring your wife to the Beit HaMikdash. And he took some water, and he put Hashem's name on a piece of paper, and he erased Hashem's name, and she drank it. If the man was just as guilty as she was, nothing happened. If she was innocent, nothing happened, and she got a bracha, and if she couldn't have children, she could have children. Ben Zachar. But if she was guilty, not only did she die, but the guy that she had the relationship with, who's 10 miles away, at the same moment, all of a sudden, boom, blew up like a balloon. That is not natural.
Yeah.
That is supernatural. So for a halacha in the Torah, that you could go to the Beit HaMikdash, and you could see a sota drink the water, and with all the kids, and watch the show, and watch her blow up and explode, I mean, that was an unusual sight. It didn't happen often, but it was an unusual sight. But, for the sake of Shalom Bayis, there was an exception made. Very interesting lesson. There's another supernatural mitzvah, Egla Arufa. What's that? A person is found murdered. Outside the city, there's a man on the highway, he's killed, he's dead. Nobody knows who committed the murder. So what's the halacha? You measure to the closest city. The closest city, they bring a calf, an egla. The elders of the city say, we did not abandon this man. We made sure he had food, we made sure he had the water. People walked with him to the city limits. We don't know what happened to him. And they break the neck of this sheep. Now that's not the end of it. As the blood flows out, the blood starts making a path, a trail. And they would follow the path, and the path would lead them to the murderer. And they would take the murderer and they would put him to death.
Wow.
Now, that's supernatural.
Yes.
That-
Was in this day.
in those days,
In those days.
right. So if you found that today, right, what happens? The police find the body, they don't know who did the murder. So you have forensics, and you have to look for the cameras, and you try to build a case, and you look at the usual suspects. If a wife dies, who's the first person they believe?
Husband.
Husband. And if a husband dies, who's the first person they believe? The wife. What does that tell you about marriage? Not good.
Not good.
Not good. If the first person they think killed the husband or the wife is the other person, not good.
Actually, last week that's what happened. It was the one who sponsored the synagogue, Rabbi Nasir.
Yeah?
60 years old guy went with his wife to Miami, and 5 o'clock in the morning he was drinking coffee, and it spilled a little bit, so he wanted to, in the balcony, he wanted to wipe the floor. And somehow he just lost the balance and just fell on the ground.
Off the balcony.
Off the balcony, somehow.
And?
In 5 in the morning.
And they arrested his wife. And they hired the lawyer, and there was like a camera all over the hotel. And they saw that he just by himself accidentally happened to be, he just wanted to wipe the floor where he spilled the coffee. And they proved it, that happened.
There were no...
I don't know the whole story, but they found out in the camera that
No, not
He
wiping.
was-
They said he dropped something and wanted to pick up.
Oh, he
Because-
bent over the
Yeah,
railing,
no, and
and then he
lost the balance.
he lost the balance, yeah. No,
But then normally the first person they suspect,
They're the wife. The
Wife.
wife. That's what they did. They
Or the
arrested they arrested the
Last
wife.
week,
Or
was
the-
that?
I'm trying to be
Last week, or 2 weeks.
politically correct here.
And in his cousin, last year, he was doing a business, the airplane. He got a crash in an airplane in Long Island. So the family, it's in the family. So they died tragically.
I try to sleep with one eye open these days. You never know. I have a lot of life insurance, I work more dead than alive. Okay, so Egla Rufa is miraculous. It's not normal for the blood to make its way for miles and
Yeah.
miles and miles, and that the police should follow
It's
it.
sheep blood.
Sheep blood.
Yeah.
They say some spray of it or?
I don't know. That's the Egla Rufa.
From
So-
where is the, like, next to the...
Person where he died,
Murder.
yes.
Next from...
So that's an unusual type thing.
Yeah.
No, it's like miraculous. See, maybe in the first Beis HaMikdash, they could ask the Urim V'Tumim, but the Urim V'Tumim didn't really work that way, so it's hard to do. The third thing that is miraculous, which is not natural, is leprosy. A person speaks Lashon Hara.
Boom.
Boom, all of a sudden, they have spots on the walls in their house, or on their clothes, or in their hair, or on their skin. Now that's very unusual. It's not a usual thing. That means if you live at a time where Miriam speaks to Aaron, did you hear what Moshe did? Moshe and his wife are separated. Who does he think he is? What makes him so great?
And Moshe got also tzara.
And Moshe got tzaras in Egypt, when he spoke about the Jewish people, they're not going to listen to me, they're not going to believe me. When people like Moshe, Miriam get tzaras, I mean, that is really shocking. Now, but it's interesting, because the first Beis HaMikdash, they were guilty of 3 cardinal sins: murder, idolatry, and incest. Arayosh, avodah zarah, shvichat damim. The second Beit HaMikdash, they were only guilty of sinat chinam, jealousy. And yet, the jealousy is equal to the 3 cardinal sins. The Chofetz Chaim says that when you speak Lashon Hara, it's so bad you lose whatever Torah you have. They bring down a famous story with the Magid. The Bet Yosef was complaining to the angel of Hashem, the Magid, that people were speaking Lashon Hara about him, and they were, trying to belittle him because he put together the Shulchan Aruch. And the angel said to him, "Don't feel bad. Tell these people thank you." He said, "What? Someone speaks Lashon Hara about me, I should say thank you?" He said, "Sure." Why? Because you just got all their mitzvos, and they just took all your averos. So when you speak Lashon Hara about a person, there's a flip-flop. You lose all your sins to them, and you get all their mitzvos. Now you go up to Shemayim, and Hashem says, "Oh, I see you made a shidduch." He said, "I didn't make a shidduch." He says, "Well, that guy did, but since he spoke Lashon Hara about you, now you get his mitzvah. So now you made the shidduch, and you get all the reward." So when a person speaks Lashon Hara, don't feel bad. Say thank you. Send them a thank you card. When someone talks about you, send them a thank you card. It's easier said than done, but what it is. The Torah says that the person who has Lashon Hara, he cries out, "Tamei, Tamei, Tamei." Why? So people should hear and daven for him. So they asked, the Gemara says, why doesn't he just daven for himself? And what's the answer? If you speak Lashon Hara, Hashem doesn't listen to your tefillot. So now, you can't even daven for yourself. You need other people to daven for you. Okay? So, it gets worse and worse and worse. You've got to be so careful. So, we talk about the Parshas Tazria, Mitzorah, and the lessons that are learned, but they go much more complicated than what it is. I'll give you another thing. Look at Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Gimel. Look what it says. It's an interesting pasuk. Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Gimel. Okay? Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Gimel. It says, "V'roah haKohen es hanega." The Kohen goes and looks at the blemish. V'or habasar, on the skin of the person. V'seir ba'nega hafach lo. When he looks at the hair is turned white. Umara nega omok me'or basaro, and the area of the plague looks deeper. It looks like the skin is being eaten away. Nega tzarasu. It looks like it's leprosy. Then it says, V'ro'o al Kohen, the Kohen should look at him and make him Tomei. So it says twice, the Kohen should look at him. It says the Kohen looks, checks it out, it looks like it's leprosy, the Kohen should look at him and then make him Tomei. Why do you have to look at him twice?
Yeah.
So the Meshech Chochmah gives a very interesting answer. The Meshech Chochmah says the first time you look at the wound.
Heal it.
Nope, you look at the wound. The wound looks leprous. Now you're going to pronounce your Tomei. Before you do that, you got to look at the person. What does that mean? You got to see what the circumstances are. Let's say the guy just got married. He's in the middle of Sheva Brachos. Do you make him Tomei? No. Now you say he's in the middle of Sheva Brachos. Well, wait, come back in a week from now. Let's say it's right before Pesach. The guy who makes him Tomei, who's going to give the seder with his family? So you say, you know what, it's right before the Chagim, see me after the Chagim. Come back in 2 weeks. That means you cannot simply say to the person, oh, Tomei, finished, end the story. The first time, you look at the blemish. The second time, you look at the person. You got to take into account what's going on in the person's life, what time of year it is. It's not so simple. Tamei, tamei, tamei. That's what the Meshech Chochmah says. Another opinion is, very interesting opinion, that before you make a person tamei, you have to look twice. That means, just because a person is speaking Lashon Hara and he looks like he's in trouble, don't just right away write him off. You say, oh, look at that person, he's Machal Shabbat, he doesn't keep kosher, he's no Jew. Because the Gemara says every Jew has mitzvahs like pomegranates have seeds. That means it's very quick to dismiss someone and say they're no good. So the Torah is telling you, before you dismiss someone to say it's no good, look twice. The same lesson is taught last week in Parsha Shmini. It talks about the chazir, the pig. And it says the chazir has a kosher sign, it has split hoofs. Who cares? It's still treif, right? It's still not kosher. If someone will say to you, what's the most non-kosher animal in the world, you'd say it's a pig. The truth is, a pig is not the most non-kosher. It has one kosher sign. But it's a message here. What is that? That before you say this person is treif, think about the pig. Even a pig has one kosher sign. That means before you dismiss a Jew and say he's no good, just remember, even the pig has a kosher sign. Everybody has something good. That means he may not be the perfect person, he may not be the perfect Jew, but he has some goodness in him.
That was the reason the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed under Rabbi Pinto. What they did was they were trying to say he's a murderer. And even though he was a murderer, they were right. If a person would kill somebody, like they killed the Zachari, and
Right.
they knew when they killed it, what happened to be, the Zachari was telling people not to kill people, to do the Tshuah, but still a lot of people did murder each other, and they spoke Lashon Hara, and they hated each other. That justified the hatred, brought the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Justified
Exactly.
action.
So, and that's what the message is. The message is, you don't hate the person. You might hate the things he does. Like when you discipline your child, you don't say you're bad. You're a bad kid. You're a good kid. You're just doing bad things. There's a way to talk to your children where you don't have to destroy them, not physically and not emotionally. So, these are things that are very, very important.
So
to
can we say
understand.
the government of Israel is so bad that they transgressing all the laws, like liberal laws?
I wouldn't say that. Natalie Portman might
But-
say
but
that.
some-
She doesn't want to accept the reward.
Who? Who?
Natalie Portman,
Oh, no.
Natalie Portman.
right? She doesn't want to accept the Genesis Award because she doesn't want to be on the same stage with Netanyahu.
So
Very nice.
as in a secular life in Israel and the religious life, when they go against the government and they go against all the laws that they created for the Jewish nation, there is a conflict. There is some kind of hatred goes on between the.
There should never be hatred.
Well, we see that the protest in the Hasidic world.
There might be that we see things, but there should never be hatred because a Haredi Jew has to stop for a moment and think that when Israel is 70 years old, many of the soldiers who fought and died, that they can walk the streets of Yerushalayim were not religious
Not
Jews.
religious Jews, right?
And they died for his right to
For his rights.
Right.
So why can't one in yeshiva world, in any other stages, like in the public places, a Rosh Yeshiva would have to speak up, say the truth, that this is what it is, that we should all be united together, and we hear it very barely.
And some Rosh Yeshivas do, and many don't,
Many don't. And why is that? I've been in many places.
because they never learned the lessons of Parshas Tazria and Mitzvah.
Yeah, that's very shocking, because we see that hatred that goes on in
There should
in the
never be
conflict.
hatred. Hatred for another Jew is why if we can't get along amongst ourselves, what do we want the non-Jewish world to like us for?
In a Satmar world, in a Hasidic world.
Correct.
I'm not, the Chabad is for the Israel, no matter
But
what
the
they-
Satmar is horrible in that regard. They do horrible things when they go to the PLO.
PLO, right.
But I'm not God. They let God correct the injustices of the world. But you're right. That means there are many Jews in Israel that are chiloni. I'm not happy that they drive on Shabbos. I'm not happy about a lot of the things. I'm not happy about a lot of the things the government does, but I'm not happy about a lot of things the government of the United States does. But I live under their protection. I benefit from their hard work and their mesiras nefesh. So I change things politically. I use my power to vote. I have the right to protest. But it's always the issues. It's not the personalities. It's the issues. You know, we've got to be very, very careful. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter often would say that why is Parshas Tazria Mitzvah after Shmini? Because Shmini tells us all the laws of kosher. So it's important to know what you put in your mouth, but it's also very important to know what comes out of your mouth. You know, he says that Lashon Hara carries 36 lavim. There are 36 different things. Now he says, he brings down over here, very famous from the Chofetz Chaim in his Sefer Shmiras HaLashon. He says there are 7 reasons why people speak Lashon Hara. And he abbreviates it, Kol Gehenim. All of Gehenim is against you. That means if you do it, it's because it's all the powers of Gehenim overtake you. And he says the first one from the word Kol, Chof, is Ka'as, angry. He says a person gets angry. When a person gets angry, they lose control. When they lose control, you never know what comes out of their mouth. There's no control. I was in shul the other week, you know, and there was this person screaming at the gabbai. How dare you talk to me like that? No one talks to me like that. You have no right to talk to me like that. I guess what happened was there was a ufruf, there was a simcha in the shul, but this man had yortzeit. So who should get the haftarah, the maftir? The chatan or the yortzeit? So the law is the chatan. But he wanted it. He wanted it. He had yortzeit. He wanted it.
Yes,
So the chatan in the end was a Kohen, so he got the Kohen aliyah, and the guy got the maftir. I remember a few weeks ago I told you from the Chidah. The Chidah says you have your side, sponsor a shir, or learn a block Gemara. Oh, you're not capable? Well, I guess we'll give you maftirs. You know, it was like the maftir was the cancellation prize. You know, you can't do anything. You can't learn a pasuk chumash. You can't learn. You can't sponsor. Okay, we'll give you maftir. You know, I have many times when I have yortzeit, someone else has yortzeit, they come over to me with, do you mind if will you give up the maftir? I says, take it. I give maftir throughout the year many times. I'll take my regular aliyah. I get aliyah. Levi is more important. It's just as good. My mother wouldn't want me to fight, and my father wouldn't want me to fight for the aliyah anyway. If I fought that I want the maftir, my parents would have been very upset with me. So it would have been disrespectful.
That's what Rabbi Yonatan Ive just points out. Is whenever we have holidays,
Yeah.
people always fight on Shabbos and Yom Tovim for the aliyahs.
Right.
And they talk on these days. These are the most holy days that we should sanctify them.
That's right. And
But
this is
happens
not,
to be
it's
the
not
biggest
worth fighting
conflict
for.
day, not a
Correct.
happy day.
So I like sitting in my own business. No one ever lets me, but I like it anyway. But anger. People get angry, and there's no control of what comes out of their mouth. They'll say everything they want, whether it's true or not true. It opens the floodgates of Rechilus, Lashon Hara, everything. Next is Litzonis. Litzonis means scorn. A person who has no respect for anything or anybody. You know, there are people who just love to hear a good, embarrassing story. They live for it. They go to shul just to hear what's the gossip of the week. That's all they want to
Oh,
hear.
yeah.
You know, that's all they hear. Number 3, arrogance, gava. A person who feels they are better than everybody else, you know, is very quick to put everybody else down and to say whatever's on his mind.
But isn't the Rambam called in Ilchot Deot that everybody have different opinions? Different opinions? Like,
Different opinions
Different
is
opinions.
not about a personal attack.
right, but the other side he says there are people that then he goes on and he goes by the order. He says, I notice like people, as my view, I see in the Rambam in Ilchot Deot, psychological problem. People do have psychological problems.
Yes, they do.
And it's difficult to explain to a person in the right way. And I noticed that being in the Keilah for many years, Rabbi knows more than me, but I noticed people do have psychological problems. The kin'ah, the sinah, the machloket, these are the psychological problems.
That is correct.
And I don't think the one rabbi would deal with that with the community if people, more than few, have problems.
He would have to learn the skills how to deal with it, or how to prevent these things from blowing up in the community, and how to get these people the help they need privately.
But these people, they say that they're on drugs. No, I mean like medical drugs.
Sometimes they are,
They
and
really say
sometimes
that.
they're
I'm
often
not
medicines.
in my understanding sometimes, not in my conscious mind.
Correct. Well, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about different personalities. He brings, for example, yiush. There are people who are depressed, right?
Yeah.
When a person is depressed and everybody is doing better than me and everybody has what I don't have, they're very quick to speak lashon hara. A person who's always negative, and no matter what happens, they don't see the good. The glass is never half full; it's always half empty. Okay, a person who rationalizes, you know, a person who rationalizes and justifies their action. That means when they do something wrong, and you bring down to them and you show them that what you did was wrong, they always have an excuse. No, I didn't do it. No. It's very hard. You know, even Shaul HaMelech, when the Shmuel said to him, you know, what's all the sheep I hear and everything else? Oh, no, we're going to bring them for korbanos. So he says, you think Hashem wants your korbanos? Hashem wants you to do what he says. He told you kill out all the sheep. He doesn't want your korbanos. No, it's good. Korbanos are good. He says, yeah, but not like this. You know, people rationalize. He says you have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful in order to understand what it is. Now, it's interesting that the korban that the person who spoke Lashon Hara brings are birds. What are birds known for? For chirping, talking a lot. One bird you kill, one bird you set free. So he says Lashon Hara is all about loose speech. The thoughtless chirping of a bird, the thoughtless chirping of a person. He says that, you know, they talk about the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim was very strict about speaking. And yet, the Chofetz Chaim was known to be a very friendly person. That means you would think that the Chofetz Chaim never spoke to anybody. He always was quiet, never had conversation. The truth is the Chofetz Chaim spoke a lot. He just didn't speak about other people. He spoke about Torah, he spoke about making the world better. There are a lot of things you can talk about without having to speak Lashon Hara. Is Lashon Hara the truth or a lie? Lashon Hara is even the truth. It just has no purpose. There are some situations where maybe there's a purpose if you're talking about a shidduch or whatever it is, but otherwise there is no purpose. You have to be very careful. You have to ask a shaila. What am I supposed to say? What am I not supposed to say? You know, let's say your friend is entering into a business deal. So your friend comes to you and says, guess what? I took a new partner. I want to take a new partner in my store. Who? Mr. So-and-so. Now you know that Mr. So-and-so is not an honest person. What do you do?
Be careful.
Do you tell him? Do you not tell him? If you tell him, is it Lashon Hara? Is it not Lashon Hara?
Just warning, you know.
Maybe you should. Maybe you shouldn't. You have to ask a shaila. You know, there are certain, you don't automatically assume that it's my place to tell him, but you have to go to someone who knows the halachos, and you have to be able to explain to him what the halachas are. It's not so simple. There are many situations, especially when it comes to shidduchim. A particular girl, a particular boy, and the family, the boy, the girl. Especially after a divorce and a second marriage, you have to know what do you say, what do you don't say. Sometimes situations that you think you know the answers for, you really don't know. You talk about people on medications, maybe they are on medication, but when they're on their medication, maybe they function very well. Maybe, you need to let the other person know that they're on medication. Then you can make your own choice, whether yes or whether no. But, these are situations that come up all the time, and it's very, very important to be very careful, because the consequence of Lashon Hara is so horrible that you got to be very, very careful before you say anything, just to make sure that you don't violate the halachos of Lashon Hara, because they are that exacting as to what happens. And it's interesting how Lashon Hara comes in stages. Now, do we have leprosy today? That means the Lashon Hara leprosy that the Torah talks about, do we have today?
According to Rambam and Sephora, there's no such thing as leprosy in our days.
Right, we don't have that leprosy,
Yeah.
and we don't have Kohanim that do it, whatever it is. According to some Meforshim, believe it or not, they say we don't have the leprosy of old, but we have many illnesses and diseases that they don't have cures for.
Right, like cancer, like
Stuff like that. And Rabbi Schwab and different people, sometimes felt that sometimes Hashem uses these elements as a substitute for leprosy.
pain.
Right. It's hard to know because, we never know why a person gets ill. And we never know why tragedy strikes. There's no way to know. Because a person doesn't know how many years they have in this world. So we know this much, that there's a lot of tragedy in the community. I told you that Chatan Kala that got killed.
Yeah.
A lot of tragedies, Next week we'll talk a little bit more about that because it's Achrei Mos Kedoshim, and we're going to talk about the tefillah. I have the whole tefillah that the Kohen Gadol said in the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur. He said two, one inside and one outside.
Do you have the Shem of Furash too?
Would you like me to share that with you?
Yeah.
Okay. You have some plans that you want to, you need to have a golem around to protect you. We can do that. But it's interesting. It's interesting. Some of the things that we're going to learn next week about the Kohen Gadol and people who, they say that a person kills accidentally, they go into Galut, the Kohen Gadol dies. A whole bunch of different responsibilities. But when you live in a community and tragedies keep happening, you have to stop for a moment and you have to ask yourself, why is this happening? That means we assume that there's a certain shmirah, that Hashem watches over the